Okay, so now that we're on the other side of the pandemic, we can finally look back with some clarity. And one question just hangs over everything, right? What was the right thing to do? Well, with the benefit of hindsight, the data actually points to one single critical strategy that saved an incredible number of lives. Today, we're going to dig into what that was. Let's get right into it. I want you to think back to early 2020. It felt like the world was facing this impossible choice, one that would literally decide the fate of millions. Do we lock everything down and grind to a halt to stop the virus? Or do we just let it spread through the population and try to get it over with as quickly as possible? Now, at the very center of this whole debate was a concept you heard a million times, herd immunity. And the idea itself is pretty simple, right? If enough people in a community are immune to a disease, the virus basically runs out of places to go. It can't spread easily, and the outbreak just fizzles out. The real question wasn't what it was, but how on earth we were supposed to get there. And that brings us to the first path that was seriously discussed. And man, was it controversial. The idea of achieving herd immunity naturally, just by letting people get infected. This wasn't just a public health strategy, it was a massive, massive gamble. The thinking on the surface kind of made sense. It went something like this. Hey, this virus is here, we probably can't stop it, so let's just rip the Band-Aid off. The faster people get exposed, get sick, and hopefully recover, the faster we build up that big wall of community immunity. But that logic came with an absolutely terrifying hidden cost. And the World Health Organization, well, they didn't pull any punches. Dr. Michael Ryan called this natural immunity idea out for exactly what it was, a cold, dangerous calculation. He called it a brutal arithmetic, which is such a powerful phrase. It just perfectly captures how that approach treated actual human lives as just numbers in an equation. And listen, this wasn't just some abstract fear. The potential numbers were genuinely horrifying. A major study from Imperial College London ran the models, and they projected that if the UK alone had gone down this path, it could have resulted in 250,000 deaths, 250,000. A number that big, it just forced everyone all around the globe to take a step back and seriously rethink things. So, while leaders and scientists were having these huge debates, something else was happening in the background. The virus itself was changing. And as more time passed, the data started to tell a completely different and totally unexpected story. And here is the absolute crucial point of this whole explainer. We thought we were fighting one single static enemy from start to finish, but we weren't. The most important metric of all, the case fatality rate, basically the percentage of people with a confirmed case who died, it wasn't a fixed number. It was dropping. And not just by a little, but dramatically. The virus was actually becoming less deadly over time. Let's just walk through the timeline, because this is wild. Back in April of 2020, during that first terrifying wave when we knew so little, the global case fatality rate hit a peak of a scary 7.1%. But then, look at this. By September of that same year, just 5 months later, that number had been slashed by more than half. It was down to 3.0%. And that downward trend just kept going. By August of 2021, we were looking at a rate of 2.1%. And by March of 2022, it had fallen all the way down to 1.3%. Just look at that progression on the screen, from 7.1 all the way down to 1.3. This means your risk of dying if you got infected in early 2022 was less than a fifth of what it was at the very beginning. This changing number, it's the key to understanding everything. So what? Why does a falling death rate matter so much? Well, it means that all those public health measures, the lockdowns, the masks, the social distancing, they had a purpose that was way bigger and way smarter than most of us realized at the time. We all remember that phrase, flatten the curve, right? And we mostly thought it was about making sure our hospitals didn't get completely overwhelmed. And that was absolutely critical. But it turns out there was a deeper strategy at play. It was about delay. Every single infection that we could push from 2020 into the future was an infection that would face a much, much weaker virus. This chart just lays it out perfectly. Getting infected early on meant you were up against the virus at its absolute deadliest, a 7.1% fatality rate, with hospitals totally swamped. But delaying that same infection, that meant you faced a much less lethal version of the virus, with a 1.3% fatality rate. Plus, you had better treatments and doctors who actually knew what they were dealing with. The strategy of buying time literally meant buying life. And this is exactly why health organizations like the WHO were so incredibly firm on this point. They weren't against the idea of herd immunity, they were against reaching it by creating a mountain of preventable deaths. The goal was always to get to that immunity level through the safest, most effective route possible: vaccination. All the lockdowns and mandates, they were the bridge to get us there. So when we put all these pieces together, what are the big lessons? What have we actually learned from this incredible global crisis that we can use to prepare for whatever comes next? Okay, so here's the bottom line. Lesson 1, vaccines are the gold standard. They are the best, safest way to get to herd immunity, period. But, and this is a huge but, in those awful, chaotic early days before a vaccine exists, the name of the game is to slow everything down. Because as it turns out, time is on our side. Delaying the spread gives the virus time to evolve, often into less deadly forms. And it gives us, the humans, time for our science to catch up. Buying time isn't just waiting around. It's an active, life-saving strategy that directly cuts down the final number of people we lose. And that leaves us with this one final, critical question for the future. We know now that a brand new virus's deadliness isn't set in stone. It can, and probably will, get weaker over time. So with that powerful piece of knowledge in our back pocket, how should that change our playbook for day one of the next pandemic? That is the lesson we simply cannot afford to forget.